much, everybody. Be seated. Okay, good evening, everybody. And we've got a very busy night tonight, so we've got a very busy night tonight, including a very important petition. So I want to be sure that our timings are right. So if we can just start. Apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have apologies from councillors Forty, Shopping, Ulicary Clark, Pauline Helly-Simons, Phillips Holsworth, Clive Jones, Kate Haynes and Ian Pittock.
Thank you. If we move on to the minutes, are members in agreement with the minutes as published? Okay. Would you like to vote on that, please? Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? Shahid?
Mr. Mayor, I've read personal declaration of interest to declare on item 26 as the revised syllabus for SACRI as I'm actually one of the trade representatives.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, public question time. Public question time, we've got 12 questions tonight, which is quite a large number. So what I would like to do is I would like to suggest that we extend the time by 15 minutes. Would you second that for me, please? Can we take a vote on that? Okay, all in favour. Can I just remind everybody, I mean, that the supplementary questions must relate to the original question or the response that's given to that question. No speeches, please. I'd also like to remind executive members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. I'm sure it won't happen, but then if any of you can't answer these questions in 2 minutes, you will also have to follow up with a written question and answer to the question. Right. Okay, so I believe we've got a change here. Trevor Sleek's not here, so we've got Keith now. Keith, would you like to ask your question? Of course, there's no supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to ask a question not in my name.
Thank you for your question. Keith, standing in for Trevor. The provision of controlled crossings will mean that crossing this road at all times of the day will be safer for pedestrians who currently only receive assistance twice a day for about an hour each maximum. The provision and design of controlled pedestrian crossings at all locations have been subject to an independent road safety audit undertaken by qualified auditors to reduce any risk associated with the installation of these crossings. We have, at your request, already provided you with a copy of the safety audit.
Thank you very much. Chris Wallace.
I've got a question stand in my name.
Thank you very much for the question, Chris. The housing service is still in the process of recruiting to the new structure, and we don't have the final figures. The 60% figure you mentioned equates to 43 staff. I can confirm that interviews are ongoing for the post in the new structure, and we'll have further detail on promotions and redundancies when the process is complete. I can also confirm that as of the 10th of July, 24 staff have been assimilated into the new structure, with 19 at risk, but there are currently 21 vacancies being recruited in the team as well. So this isn't a process of reducing the amount of vacancies. Whilst the 21st Council aims to make services available 24/7 by the website, so people can raise requests and queries when they want to, when it's convenient to them, we really recognise that not everybody wants to use the website, not everybody wants to use a phone, and we will still committed to retain the availability to handle requests face-to-face and over the phone.
Thank you. Mr. Wallace, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Pauline. Yes, last September you ordered the executive member apologised to tenants for breaking the law. 10 months later, that same law has been broken again. You have failed to consult all of your tenants. Has Grenfell been forgotten so soon? How can anyone trust the council which allows this?
Thank you, Chris. Obviously, I wasn't in this post then. We certainly have no intention of breaking the law, and we will do everything we can to uphold it. As far as this particular example is concerned, I'm going to have to go and investigate a bit further. If you could possibly provide me with a bit more detail, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Humphreys.
Last year you appointed 2 executive member posts with highways in the title. With Councillor Lee's defeat at the recent election in May, his position is not replaced. Does this mean that strategic highways are no longer regarded as important, or was it a post with no substance created simply to reward a loyal party member with the executive title, what is colloquially known as a job for boys?
None of the mics are working here at the moment, so I'll shout. Following the local elections in May, I reshaped the executive and transferred the strategic highway matters to the executive member for highways and transport, which I'm sure you will agree is an appropriate place for these responsibilities. You can find a list of the executive member responsibilities in section 5 of the Constitution for this council.
Okay, not working. I'm fully aware of that, but the point was, for a year you had 2 posts, so why was it we never had 2 posts before, and now suddenly we had 1 post again? What was so different last year, and why did David's defeat make this difference?
Thank you. I thought that I would set out last year, at the beginning of the year, when we were doing the local plan, to put them into separate posts, to put the strategic in with the local plan. But after a rethink last year, at the beginning of this year, I thought that I would bring all of the highways into one portfolio.
Thank you. Diane Hayes.
I'd like to ask the question standing in my name.
Thank you very much, Diane. I can confirm the Assistant Director of Housing and Income Assessments has met with legal and insurance colleagues a number of times regarding the questions you've raised, but has not formally requested legal advice yet. This is due to Council still analysing a report regarding our lease arrangements with all our shared owners in Blackwater and Larchstone Place. We fully understand our rights and responsibilities regarding shared ownership leases, and we'll be in a position to formally request legal advice when we've completed that review. This piece of work is ongoing and is still to be completed by the end of calendar year 18.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Simon Price said he was going to come back by the beginning of July with an answer about these contracts, and as yet I still have no answer to this.
I've had a couple of conversations with Simon since I received your question, and I'd be very happy to meet you and talk about it a bit further if that would help, and to make sure that you get the answer that you need.
Richard Gregory.
I'd like to ask a question standing in my name.
Thank you, Richard. Quite a similar question. I understand the concerns expressed by tenants, and we've been looking at how we can resolve the matter to reduce the costs to shared owners. We unfortunately are in a contract until March 2020. In terms of the market rate for insurance, it's actually quite complicated. The risks and the history of claims affects the premium rates, and we do monitor the history of claims very, very closely. It's also got a complex history, and I assure you a range of actions are taking place to solve the matter. In answer to this question, I can't really do justice to explain the details, so as I offered to your colleague, I'd very much like to meet you and actually talk about it and get the situation resolved, if that would be okay. Or indeed all your other colleagues as well.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Would you consider £508 for buildings insurance alone acceptable when we could go out and buy it you have £1 million worth of rebuild insurance for £60 on the open market with a highly reputable company?
I think the issue is that we've got a shared policy here, and some people and some areas of claim in that shared policy probably wouldn't be able to get insurance at all, and other people would be able to get it cheaper than depending on their claims history. The problem at the moment is we've got a shared contract. The reason we've got a shared contract is because we need to be sure that everybody is insured because it's shared property and we have an interest in it as well. So it's quite a complicated position. I understand what you're saying. I understand that I wouldn't like to pay £500 insurance for a house if I've got a good claims history either. But the problem is that the whole claims history is taken into account the whole group before the premium is. I think the issue is it's quite a difficult problem to solve because of that circumstance. But let's have a conversation about it separately.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Sue Chapman.
I work at Meadow Nursery School on Murray Road, and one of the roles of our school crossing patroller fulfils is to teach the children at our nursery school about road safety. After the removal of the roads of the school crossing patrol, will Wokingham Borough Council arrange for a road safety officer to visit our school to talk to the children about road safety?
Thank you for your question. The Council's road safety and My Journey teams undertake training at our schools throughout the borough in both road safety and the promotion of sustainable travel. We would be delighted to arrange a visit to your school.
Do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
Alex, questions?
I'll ask the question standing in one row.
This is quite a long answer, I'm afraid, Mr. Mayor. School crossing patrollers are employed to provide assistance to those requiring to cross the road. They are not there to enforce traffic infringements such as parking issues. We recognise that over the many years, school crossing patrollers have operated, and their passion for the job has meant they have extended their role beyond the tasks they have actually been employed to do. Issues such as you mentioned are not unique to locations near school crossing patrol sites, and ultimately it is drivers' responsibility to drive safely and legally, and any concerns relating to poor driving should be reported to the police on the non-emergency number 101. Parking issues can now be dealt with directly by Woking Borough Council following the transfer of enforcement powers from the police last October 2017 through civil parking enforcement. Parking adjacent to schools is a known concern, and since the introduction of CP, the Council has prioritised visits by the enforcement officers at schools. The team is relatively small in number, and it is therefore not possible to be at every school every day. Therefore, any specific problems relating to parking can be reported to the Council's parking enforcement team. The team will then work with the school to address these issues and target areas of concern in their patrols. Contact details for the parking enforcement team can be found on the website, and if you need to contact me, I'm happy to as well.
Do you have a supplementary question? Nicholas.
I asked the question standing in my name.
Thank you very much for your question. At each of the school crossing patrol sites, an assessment of the location was first undertaken in accordance with the processes described for establishing school crossing patrol sites in the Road Safety GB document entitled School Crossing Patrol Service Guidelines. The assessment considers the number of pedestrians and vehicles during the morning peak and indicates whether a patroller would or would not be justified, should the council provide this discretionary service, or whether additional facilities such as pedestrian crossings may be justified. The assessment of the majority of sites indicated that the patrollers would be justified. Since the council proposal was not to provide a crossing patroller, the sites were identified for pedestrian crossings. The provision of the proposed crossings has been thoroughly reviewed by an independent qualified road safety professional to ensure that they are safe before implementation. However, as part of the review process, additional road safety audits and assessments will be carried out following the introduction of the crossings, and any identified issues raised in these will be actioned accordingly.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I Thank you. So I don't know all the ins and outs and the numbers that are required for the installation of these permanent crossings, but clearly the flow of traffic along Murray Road is very heavy, and you deem it necessary to put this crossing in. Would the council be prepared to look in or investigate the possibility of Murray Road becoming one way? Because we have the situation where we have single file traffic basically at peak times. And I wonder if that would be one possible solution for the amount of traffic that goes along there.
Obviously, high traffic volumes would indicate the need for a permanent crossing anyway. I'm happy to meet with you. Sorry, apologies, I thought I'd managed this. Higher traffic flows make it more likely, more appropriate for us to put in a fixed crossing. I haven't thought of turning my road into a one-way system. I'm happy to meet with you and talk to you about it. I'm happy to talk to officers. But given that there's a lot of issues with traffic and getting traffic around the town at the moment, I wouldn't like to say that it's inevitable, but I'm happy to talk to you about it and see whether it's appropriate.
Thank you. Helen Edwards.
Enabling children to walk, cycle or scooter to school safely is important for a fit and healthy community. And I've noticed many Year 6 children walk to school by themselves, which means they learn important road safety skills before having to make the longer, more dangerous journeys to secondary school. I feel that parents are going to be less inclined to allow their child to walk to school if the journey is considered unsafe. How will the local authority ensure that the additional functions that our SCP performs are maintained? For example, enforcing parking restrictions to assure me that my child is safe too.
Thank you very much for your question. School crossing patrollers are employed to provide assistance to those requiring to cross the road. They are not there to enforce traffic infringements such as parking issues or provide any additional functions. We recognise that over the many years school crossing patrollers have operated, and their passion for the job has meant they have extended their role beyond the tasks that they've been employed to do. General road safety issues such as dangerous driving, speeding vehicles or poor parking, such as those you mentioned, are not unique to locations near school crossing patrol sites, and ultimately it is drivers' responsibility to drive safely and legally, and any concerns relating to poor driving should be reported to the police on the non-emergency number 101. Parking issues can now be dealt with directly by Woking Borough Council following the transfer of enforcement plans to the police last October through civil parking enforcement. Parking adjacent to schools is a known concern, and since the introduction of CPE, the Council has prioritised visits by the enforcement officers at schools. The team is relatively small in number, and it is therefore not possible to be at every school every day. Therefore, any specific problems relating to parking can be reported to the Council's parking enforcement team. The team will then work with the schools to address these issues and target areas of concern in their patrols. It is the responsibility of parents or carers to ensure that their child is safe on the highway. Parents and carers play a vital part in teaching children general road safety and also how to cross the road safely. However, the Council's road safety and My Journey teams do undertake training at our schools throughout the borough in road safety and promotion of sustainable traffic. These will continue after the patrollers have been removed. Should your school wish to arrange bespoke training on the use of pedestrian crossings or any other related road safety area, please ask them to contact Council using the contact details available on the website.
Do you have a supplementary?
No.
Sally Garnes.
So the salary of a school crossing patroller is considerably less than the cost of installing these crossings. How long will it take for this transition to be a cost-effective decision for the council? And what will you do if it's unsuccessful? If, suppose, you get an increase in accidents, or you get the local roads jamming up, or you get an increase in complaints from parents or from residents, and many years of budget have been spent, what are you planning to do?
Thank you very much for your question. The cost of new permanent crossing facilities and the removal of school crossing patrollers will be cost neutral within about 8 years of implementation. The provision of the proposed crossing has been thoroughly reviewed by an independent qualified road safety professional to ensure it is safe before implementation. However, as part of the review process, additional safety audits and assessments will be carried out following the introduction of crossings and any identified issues raised in these will be actioned accordingly. And I would like to add that these new crossings will be available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, not just at the times when children go to school. They're available to all residents all of the time. So I do think that it is a safer choice.
Do you have a supplementary?
So as a regular user of that road, I don't think it's a 24-hour problem. I think it's a beginning and end of school day problem. And I wonder if you could say a bit more about what these additional measures may be if the crossings are inadequate.
I believe I have to come back to you on that one. I'll give you a written response.
In the afternoon, one of the functions the school crossing patroller performs is to stop people crossing to enable traffic to pass, given that there is a steady stream of people out of the schools. Without this, there could be substantial blocking back of traffic, leading to frustration and less safe driving. How will the authority ensure this does not happen?
Thank you for your question. The proposed crossings will be manually controlled, either by pedestrian flow at zebra crossings or by the push-button unit at signal crossings. While the flow of pedestrians will fluctuate, this may have some impact on traffic. It's the driver's responsibility by law to stop at zebra crossing if a pedestrian wishes to cross, or at the changing of the signals, should it be a toucan crossing. Pedestrians should also wait until the vehicle is stopped, either at the stop or the give way lines before proceeding to cross.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Overcrowding and backlog of people by the crossing has meant that one of the other schools that previously had an SCP now has to construct a safe zone on their school site for the children to go in. Has the council reviewed the suitability and taken into account the cost of any potential structural changes needed to fence off safe zones once the SCP has gone in order to keep the children safe?
I think the answer to that is no, but we will do that work anyway.
Thank you. Diane Birch?
I'd like to ask a question standing on there.
Thank you for your question. The data previously collected shows that the school crossing controller will be justified at this site, should the council choose to provide this service. As part of the process, it was decided that if the school crossing controller was justified, then a permanent pedestrian crossing would be provided. Therefore, the doubling of the amount of pedestrians would also mean that the school crossing controller would be justified, and then and it would have the same outcome, i.e. a fixed crossing would be more sensible than otherwise. We will not carry out further surveys as the initial survey met the justification, and the new data would also seek to confirm that this is still the case.
Do you have a supplementary?
Unfortunately not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Question and members. That was very well done. Petitions. Do we have any petitions? No new petitions. Okay. Okay, well, we'll move on to 21, which is the petition debate. Do you understand you have 5 minutes to speak?
My name is Annette Medhurst, and I am the chair of the management committee at Meadow Nursery School on Murray Road. And we set up this petition basically when we heard that the review of non-statutory services for the Woking Borough Council had proposed removal of 7 school crossing controllers across the borough, and that these school crossing controllers would be replaced with permanent crossings. It is the belief of the signatories of the petition that you will be debating here this evening that this decision will have a significant negative impact on the safety of our children. I accept that the role of the school crossing controller is to provide a safe place for children and parents and carers to cross the road, usually in proximity to a school. And that broadly speaking, this is the function that a permanent crossing, a zebra crossing or a pelican crossing will perform. However, most recent data from the Department of Transport clearly show that there are actually less accidents when people are crossing the road at the side of a school crossing controller compared to a zebra or pelican crossing. In particular, a permanent crossing cannot do many things. It cannot maintain traffic flow. It cannot enforce parking restrictions, and it cannot teach our children about the safety that is required when crossing the road. And we have heard in the answer from Councillor Pollock this evening that these things really fall outside the remit of a school crossing patroller. And I've seen it also at executive meetings, letters to the local paper, that it has been repeatedly stated this isn't the job of a school crossing patroller. And of course, I agree, it should be the role of our parents to make sure their children get to school safely. And it should be the driver's responsibility to make sure that they're driving with due care and attention, particularly around schools where we have children doing erratic things like putting their foot out into the road. But surely, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the safety of the children. Surely that should be of the utmost importance to everyone in this room. And I believe that a permanent crossing is an inferior solution to that of the school crossing patroller, who is a highly skilled individual and really goes above and beyond for her job. So I ask you to consider this point when you're thinking about the negligible cost savings over time when you will remove the school crossing patrollers and put permanent crossings in place. And now Diane's going to say a few words to the others.
Good evening. My name is Diane and I've been a lollipop lady on Murray Road for the best part of 8 years. My crossing is very busy and can be dangerous, particularly when it is raining or there is major disruption on surrounding roads. It has a bottleneck for both cars and pedestrians due to parked cars and safety barriers. I firmly believe that if you replace me with a pedestrian crossing, it is an accident waiting to happen. Zebra crossings originated in 1949 when traffic conditions were very different. The Highway Code states, remember that traffic does not have to stop until someone has moved onto the crossing. Keep looking both ways and listening in case a driver or rider has not seen you and attempts to overtake a vehicle that has stopped. From a pedestrian's point of view, how safe does that sound in 2018? Former Executive Member for Transport and Highways, Councillor Baker, is reported to have said that patrollers often put their lives at risk, stepping into the road to stop the traffic. We don't. But by installing a zebra crossing, that is exactly what he is proposing the parents or their children do. In contrast, I provide a safe environment across the road, given my training, experience and high-vis clothing. In 2015, this council made a decision to remove all patrollers, but only where there was a viable, safe mechanism of crossing the road for parents and children. We are disputing that the zebra crossings you intend to roll out to replace your SCPs are safe at all. Anyone can go onto YouTube and see people being mown down on them. Mr. Baker has also suggested that the decision was basically made back in 2015. If that is so, why did you hold a consultation in March this year, which showed that only 9 of the 393 respondents were in favour of these proposals? And what would it take for you to consider changing this decision? We have been told that the council has prioritised visits by the parking enforcement officers at schools. If this were true, I would have expected to have seen them a lot more than 5 times since October. Whilst we understand the need for tight budgeting, is it really possible to put a financial value on a child's safety? Thank you.
Okay, members, it's now our opportunity to debate this petition. Would you like to put your hands up so we can see who wants to speak? Please keep your hands up. Okay, thank you. Put your arms down now. Keith Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, I believe everyone here in this chamber fully acknowledges the social interaction between patrollers and families. The supporting statement lists 3 additional benefits gained from using patrollers, and we've heard some of them repeated here tonight. First, enforcing parking restrictions. Patrollers have no legal authority to enforce parking restrictions. In fact, they are putting themselves in potential danger of serious abuse just trying to stop a parent parking on a yellow line. Next, managing traffic flow. I agree that stepping out in front of traffic will slow the traffic down, but so will stepping onto a pedestrian crossing. And drivers approach pedestrian crossings all the time, many times. They know what to do. Lastly, teaching children important lessons about road safety. Teaching requires dedicated time to properly explain road safety, which the patrollers simply do not have. The police and council officers often go into school to teach road safety, needing a reasonable amount of time to convey the safety messages. But the crux of this petition is about not believing the introduction of a pedestrian crossing will perform the same function as a patroller. So let's look at the highway code. It's already been selectively mentioned, and see what the law has to say about both patrollers and pedestrian crossings. Did you know that a patroller has to use 4 different signals? Of course, the lady down there, she's shaking her head, so she doesn't even know the highways code. She has to do 4 different ways There is only one relevant legal regulation, which states that a driver must obey the final stop signal of a number of individuals, including patrollers. In contrast, pedestrian crossings have over a dozen references to legal regulations reflecting the seriousness of the safety of individuals crossing the road. Highway Code Rules 191 to 199, spread over 3 pages, specifically define the legal responsibilities drivers have when approaching a crossing. Whereas the driver may argue that the patroller did not carry out the correct signal, there is absolutely no room for misunderstanding on the legal requirements on drivers approaching a crossing. Whilst I can understand the fear that the proposed changes might be less safe, we actually have evidence that this is not the case. Approximately a year ago, several patrollers, including 2 in my ward, who were operating on pedestrian crossings, were removed. Since then, I believe there has been no recorded incident on any of these locations. So in summary, I firmly believe that pedestrian crossings are a safe way of crossing the road, and the proposed action should continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Croy.
It's sabotaged again. It's a plot.
It's a red flag.
It's a red flag. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Diane, and for bringing this to council. This first came, as Dan said, to council in 2015, when the cuts were first proposed as part of the budget execution for that year. The cuts were again proposed in 2016, when the Tories, and it was just the Tories, voted to cut these services. Now, once the council has agreed that funding should be cut, we have a consultation. It is a question of really, we cut service and then we have a consultation about the service. Do you have any idea how ridiculous this makes us look, and how this council is discredited by taking the decision to cut the service and then consulting on the cut? It's a nonsense. The consultation did receive a good response, with 393 responses. Of these, 98% were opposed to the cut. And that's because residents recognise what the Borough Council does not. That patrols may cost £44,000 a year, but they are worth so much more. The value of the service provided is far higher than the £44,000. And of course patrols contribute to a sense of community. Of course they encourage families to walk to school. And of course patrols discourage bad driving and bad parking. And of course all of this extra value has been ignored in the Borough Council's response to their consultation. And this is a shame, because as Councillor Pollock has said several times, the patrollers do add considerable extra value to their communities. And I think if all of the value the patrollers add were included in the consultation, there would be no justification at all for cutting this service. But the council has already voted to cut the service. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Tories who voted to cut this service as part of the medium-term financial plan in 2016, and then I have the names here, you can reverse this decision. Mr Mayor, I have here a motion which calls on the council to reverse this cut, and at the end of the debate I hope to catch your eye, and I'll be sitting right here so you know where to look. I trust that all members will support us in our call to reverse this cut. And in particular, Anthony, you voted for the cut in 2016, but now as executive member for Highways you can reverse that decision. And Charlotte, you voted for the cut in 2016 as well, but now as leader of your group, you can lead your group in doing the right thing. And Malcolm, you voted for the cut in 2016, but now with 2 locations in your ward affected, you can also make amendments. All members here now have the chance to do the right thing and to respect the results of the consultation and reverse the decision to cut the school crossing patrols.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for this chance to speak on this. This is clearly an emotive topic, one that many feel passionately about. And what this is about is providing a safe environment for our children to walk to school, something that I believe strongly in, as I've begun the process of teaching my young daughter to hold my hand and look both ways across the street, something every parent does. However, with road usage continuing to rise, with almost 2/3 of all trips now being used by cars, 3/4 of freight being moved by road, it is apparent that road usage will continue to rise, and outside of our schools are a key area that require protection. The roads outside our schools...
Guys, sorry,
Yeah,
somebody's got
Oh.
John, switch you.
Start again.
We had
The roads outside our schools should, no, must, possibly be as safe as possible. This requires more than just school crossing patrollers. It requires yellow lines, drop curbs, pedestrian crossings, ideally signal controlled in my opinion, and in addition to work with parents, schools, CPE, the council, the police and other agencies. Having attended meetings on site with the officers outside Modern School in my ward and reviewed the Pelican crossing patrol proposals for the site and made my own suggestions that have been taken on board. What I'm seeing that the council is doing is investing in the current and future safety of our children, both in school hours, but also improving safety by providing a crossing that is operational all day, all year round, not just at school drop-off times. The council is being responsible to provide a safe environment as possible for our children and parents, in fact all residents, to walk to school as safe as possible. But this is something that I believe we should be doing. When I was growing up in Hampshire, in my teenage years I was instructed by my parents to go and pick up my younger sister from school and walk her home, as any good big brother does. She may dispute that good big brother term. And every time I went there, I smiled and had a chat with the school crossing patroller that worked on the road. He was there smiling and greeting children for many years, and an integral part of the community for many, many years. Until, tragically, 5 years ago, while on duty, in full high visibility gear, on a bright sunny day, he was hit by a car and sadly passed away whilst helping a family cross the road. This is more than about school crossing patrollers. This is about making our roads as safe as possible. By investing in them, new technologies, providing safer roads for our pedestrians and our children walking to school. With growing vehicle usage, I believe that more needs to be done, and that permanent crossings, ideally signal control, and with other traffic calming measures, are the way forward. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. I kind of have to
declare a bit of an interest because I actually went to Malta County Infants and St Paul's, so I'm very well aware of what the school crossing controller there does. But of course, back in my day at the time, at these schools, children walked to school on their own from the age of 5. Today, most parents don't feel safe about letting their young children walk to school unaccompanied, and many live too far away or are on tight schedules. This has generated a whole new set of problems in recent years, with additional road traffic problems that I really feel are not being tackled around our schools at all. It's obviously school crossing patrollers do far more than what their job spec. They are, but like it or not, they are there every day enforcing basic traffic problems and talking to the parents. We need to look more closely at how children get to school and feeling quite safe is key. School crossing patrols are very much part of the picture when it comes to making these roads within the school feel safer at least. I'd like to point out that last year, just after I got elected to Woking Borough Council, I was alerted to the fact that the Embrook School Crossing Patrol was warned that she was due to be made redundant, along with the 7 others like her. This is before the consultation was complete. She works in an area around a school of about 2 block size, which has 3 schools and 2 nursery schools. We put up vehicle-activated signs along the road. There was 18,000 traffic movements along that stretch of road. Over 40% was speeding. She's still got cold, and nothing's been done to make that road safer for people to use. Anyhow, this was followed by me asking questions to the executive and letters to the local paper, and there was 2 petitions, as mentioned before, with over 600 people signing those. Many of those have signed this petition here. So this is a cumulative effect of what has been going on for nearly 4 years now. So I put it to you all who agreed to this 2 or 3 years ago. You've been putting our children at risk, and it's still putting our children at risk today. Despite the consultations, I think the consultations are a farce, and I don't believe that the Woking Borough Council has been listening to the parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Delinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you'd be pleased to know that I'm going to be very short, brief on this. One of the school crossing points is actually my ward, Loddon. Sits outside. It serves Woodley C of E. But what a lot of people don't know, on the opposite side of the road, directly opposite the opposite side of the road, is the Woodley Airfield Centre, which is the home of Assist. And for those who don't know what that is, that's the Autism Spectrum Service for Information Support and Training. And it actually invites a large number of autistic children there every single day. It's not just during school hours that they access that building, it's actually throughout the whole day and at the weekends. So I actually welcome a fixed crossing point outside the school that joins the Woking Woodley Airfield Centre. It will provide a much safer crossing point. Thank you.
Thank you. The school crossing patrollers have provided a valuable service for many years, and we believe this has been forgotten in the rush to close down these services. Little mention of the safety of our children has been made, and the main reason for closing this service down is a financial one. Even here, we have significant concerns that the finance figures being used to justify closure are not accurate and do not include the ongoing revenue costs of providing pedestrian crossings. And what I mean there is there's £361,000 we have to borrow. Interest on money borrowed is revenue. And if at 1%, 2% or 3% of that money each year. So you're not saving there. Equally, you have to have a maintenance contract associated with your pedestrian crossings. Maintenance contract is also revenue account. So we challenge your figures that you are actually saving. And equally, we are very concerned that you have a person, 0.59% of a person, allocated to these 7 people. We think it's more like 10 to 12% of the job than nearly 60%. So I think that some of the savings, and we actually not sure whether the actual person is in post. So we believe that the executive have already planned to put in pedestrian crossings before the consultation has already been completed. Our greatest concerns therefore revolve around the safety of our children and the accuracy of the financial costs presented. We on this side believe the executive should review the options for this service rather than close down the school patrol service in Woking completely. Thank you.
John Gill. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am one of the borough councillors for Twyford. The school crossing in Twyford is on the main London road through Twyford, just past the Ruscombe Road and Springfield Park turnings, both of which are very busy early junctions in the morning. Leaving Twyford, there is a small bend to the left, which means traffic travelling into Twyford from Ruscombe is partly blind. Many parents park in Springfield Park and then cross the London Road to Polehampton Infant School. There is no parking on the London Road, so the school crossing goes across a central reservation, which can cause some confusion with traffic not knowing whether one half of the road is being stopped or the whole road is being stopped. We are lucky not to have had a number of car accidents already. A pelican crossing, as well as the central reservation, will make crossing this road much safer for children, as vehicles will be able to see the crossing many metres before they arrive at the crossing, giving them time to brake and stop. This particular school crossing does not have traffic parking on the road, nor can the school crossing installer manage the traffic flow. They have to wait for a break in the traffic before venturing into the road. This increases the number of children waiting to cross and increases the risk of an accident. I note that an added bonus in changing to a pelican crossing will be the ability of other people to cross the road safely 24/7. Many people from south of the village, Springfield Park and Ruscombe, use this crossing point throughout the day and early evening for both getting to the shops and to Lawton Hall, King George's Field for some special events, and the Scouts and the Youth Clubs. I note that the only other controlled crossing over the London Road is at the main crossroads traffic lights, which has one point for all crossings both ways. This is a dangerous crossroads, as many motorists appear to jump the red lights because they don't want to wait for 5 changes of the lights. This results in at least one fatality in the last 5 years. For all these reasons, I disagree with the petition for the council to abandon its proposal, as many people, in particular school children, will benefit from this much needed improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Burgess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, can I thank Annette Medhurst and Diane Birch for bringing this important petition here today, and also for everyone that's asked questions today. It's clear from the